Hey everybody, it's Chris. Thanks for the download. I'll do the full intro in a little bit, but I just wanted to mention up front that Ian and I recorded this podcast this past Sunday. It is now Friday the 9th. Unfortunately, I just haven't had a chance to produce this and get it out to you guys yet. So we had to do some heavy editing because, frankly, some of the stuff we said was plain wrong or got stale. The stuff that was wrong, it turned out that Luis Alexander Basabe is not eligible for this year's Rule 5 draft. So we had a conversation about the Rule 5 draft and who might get protected. That is now, completely doesn't make any sense because now we know that he's not eligible because of a wrinkle in the rules that I'll probably talk about on the next episode when we have that conversation again. But anyways, thank you for the download. This will be a little bit of a shorter episode because we kind of chopped it up a little bit. But again, thanks for listening, and we'll be back at you with another episode soon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the official podcast of the best source on the internet for all the news, scouting, insight, and more on the Boston Red Sox farm system. Thank you for the download. My name is Chris Hatfield. I'm the executive editor of Sox Prospects, coming to you from Sox Prospects Mid-Atlantic here in our nation's capital. It is a Sunday night of this Labor Day weekend. I hope you're all enjoying your long weekends, hopefully less busy than I've been, but hey, c'est la vie. This is the life we choose. And I'm joined on the horn today by just one of the usual co-hosts on the podcast, our director of scouting, Ian Kundle. Hello, Ian.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Matt. Oh, wait, Matt's not here. Sorry. Hi, Chris. Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
No, Matt is not with us. We've kicked.
He has a social life, so he decided to go down somewhere.
Yeah.
Don't know if we should say. So
super kicked him through the barbershop window. No. No, he's not going to be with us today, unfortunately, but Ian and I, too much has happened recently for us to not hop on the horn and start talking about all of the news that's been going on. It's just a lot happening in the world of Red Sox prospects in the farm system. So we'll talk about all that today, but first, a few notes. Make sure you rate and subscribe and review, or I guess it would be in the order of subscribe and rate and review. It really helps us, helps the algorithms on iTunes and Stitcher and whatnot. You can get us on, like I said, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, YouTube. Subscribing is the easiest way for you to know when there's new episodes up. So please do that. It helps us out. Big thank you to the Ludlow Thieves for our intro music. Go check them out on iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, however it is that you listen to music, if that's what you do. We love getting your emails. We got a couple today. Send those to podcast@soxprospects.com. We have a bunch of we only have a couple of emails today, but we want to talk about what you want to hear about, so send those emails in. And I think also we're going to try this. You could send us tweets if you would prefer to do that instead of emails. Use the hashtag AskSP. So it's ASKSP. Because if you just at us, if you just mention us, it's going to get lost. Because I have a lot of mentions that come in automatically and things like that. Things that are
humble brag.
Things that are not. Well, no, it's that they're like when we automatically tweet stuff, it shows up.
No, I'm just messing with you.
It's not a humble brag at all. Trust me, I wish they weren't there. But yeah, so if you guys could do that, we were gonna try that. I'm gonna add a column to my tweet deck. For the hashtag AskSP. So give that a shot if you want. What else? I think that's about it, Ian. We've got a lot to talk about. A lot of things happening. New rankings. Yohan Moncada's up, and other September call-ups, a couple other promotions. You saw some first-hand stuff, and we've got some emails. And there's the Arizona Fall League. Lots of stuff to talk about. Where do you want to start? I'll leave it to you. Leave it in your capable hands. Direct us to our first topic of conversation.
I guess, should we just start off with rankings since that was the first thing you mentioned? And we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, we might as well. So the new rankings, as always, came out at the beginning of the month. Some contentious discussion, some stuff we agreed upon that I think might surprise some people. So I guess we'll just start at the top. The top three, actually the top 8, I believe, stayed the same. I'm going to bring that up in a minute here. But
it's the top 8.
Yeah, the top 8 stayed the same.
And I think we all had the same order, too.
Yeah, we were unanimous on them, which I think might surprise some people. So the top 3, Yohan Moncada, Andrew Benintendi, Rafael Devers were the top 3. I don't think any of us even considered putting Benintendi above Moncada, even though Benintendi was in Boston and had some success until his left knee sprain. And this was before Moncada was for certain getting called up. It was only for certain getting called up if you were paying attention or listening to the Sox Prospects podcast or reading the website, because we've been telling you this for a few weeks now that he was coming up on the first. But Moncada at 1, Benintendi at 2, Devers at 3. Up top with, we should talk about the top prospect, Yohan Moncada, promoted to the big leagues. As I've said, we talked about this if anybody was listening. It looks like he's going to be the everyday starter, at least against right-handed pitching at third base. What are you seeing out of Moncada? I know I'm not surprised. We've talked ad nauseum about the fact that we thought this was clearly happening once they started playing him at third base, even though, the front office guys who were getting interviewed about it were trying to downplay it. But, through his first 3 games at Oakland, he's, 4 for 10 with a double, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, has made a couple of errors. Pretty much sounds exactly like what we were expecting out of him.
Yeah, I mean,
although maybe not the funny. 4 for 10. He's not going to hit 400 the rest of the way.
No, but it's just funny because he's swing and miss. He's got a ton of swing and miss. He's working counts. Some of these I was watching some of yesterday's games or yesterday the game and today, and it's a lot of getting to ahead 3-1, 3-2 counts. So he's doing what we saw in spring training. Putting together professional at bats. But yeah, I think it's the right move both for the player, because I think he's one of those guys that could thrive in the big league environment. Having seen him, a lot this year and in camp and everything, he carries himself like, with some swagger, kind of like he belongs.
In a good way.
And I think in a good way, yeah. And I think it's something that he at times maybe wasn't being challenged in the minor league level. And bringing him up here now, he's going to be challenged, and he's going to have to go in there and focus day in, day out, and work hard every day. And I think that's going to be something good for him, especially when he's going to be around, seeing guys like David Ortiz, especially. Then, you have Bogarts, Betts. They got a lot of guys on the team that he can, look up to and see what they've done and be like, that's what I want to do. And so I think that's a good thing. And as we talked about, you and I did, I think in the article we wrote about it, that the production they've been getting from third base has been unacceptable for the last, couple of months.
Yeah, well, Alex Spear pointed out in his 108 Stitches newsletter. By the way, quick correction, he's only got 1 error he made today. So
was it 1? Oh,
yeah.
They gave a hit on the other one that I'm thinking of then.
Right. But that said, Alex Spear noted in the 108 Stitches newsletter, which if you aren't signed up for it, I don't know what's wrong with you.
It's very good.
But he pointed out that the average on-base percentage and slugging that the Red Sox have been getting out of third base, all 3 of those numbers are worst in baseball since the All-Star break. Or at least the American League. I don't know if it was all of baseball. But that's the fact of the matter is it wasn't acceptable. So that's why this is the shot in the arm they're hoping for. Maybe, like Farrell said the other night when Travis Shaw went deep on Friday night, that Shaw responded in a great way to Moncada being called up. But, maybe Moncada struggles a little bit. They go back to Shaw and say, all right, you going to give it to us or not? And maybe this is the shot in the arm for him. So not that he's not trying or anything, but sometimes you need that little push.
Well, that's the thing. Competition can breed results. So, you got some competition at third base, especially from against, you got a pretty good platoon with either Shaw or Moncada and then Aaron Hill. Because I think that's the key thing is they need to limit Moncada's exposure to left-handed pitching because he really can't hit left-handed pitching. I know he had a hit yesterday off a lefty, but
right now, let's be clear. Right now, he can't. You're saying it's not
right now. Yes, correct. I don't know if you have the splits up from Portland this year, but we talked about them extensively. I mean, it's not pretty. But I think that in the way they're planning on using him is going to be good, and it can limit kind of his flaws or minimize them, which, as we said right now, is the left-handed pitching thing, and then the defense, by putting in a defensive replacement later in games for him, either Shaw or Hill. So having those extra guys on the roster will be useful in that regards. And I think he also brings another dimension with his speed. I know he got picked off today, which was pretty brutal read on his part, but he is the fastest guy they have on their bench or / in, a non-everyday role. Other than Betts, other than Betts, he's the fastest guy on the team. Mm-hmm. And so I think that they need that dynamic when, especially in September, when those pinch running situations are kind of important, that when he's not starting, he has the potential to impact the game, even if he only comes in that capacity. Mm-hmm. So I think that, I think it's useful. I think there are going to be some, ups and downs. He's going to strike out a lot. He's going to make the errors like he did today, where it was just, it was an easy routine ground ball. I'll play that, third baseman at the big league level needs to make 10 out of 10 times. And he kind of just was a little lazy about it, fielded it off to the side. And that's been his major issue. It's the tools are there defensively. It's just the focus and the fundamentals lack. Mm-hmm. And we kind of saw that today. And that's something that I think having Brian Butterfield working with him is going to be really good for him. And they're going to have to, drill that into him, that is a ball that's a play you have to make every time. You mm-hmm. cannot not make that play. And hopefully, getting those extra reps will be good for him going forward.
Yeah, just the numbers versus left-handed pitchers in Portland. 6 hits in 36 at-bats. This is in 43 plate appearances, so it's not the biggest sample size in the world, but in 43 plate appearances, 19 strikeouts. That's 44% of his plate appearances he struck out against left-handers at the AA level, which is just it's not good.
Well, it's something, too, when you see him, I'm actually going to put up a video probably tomorrow or the next day on the Sox Prospects YouTube page that is just a back and forth of him swinging left-handed and right-handed and some slow-mo stuff. And you can see in this video, you'll see that his swing from the left side is just much better. And from the right side, he's just nowhere near as comfortable. And it's something that it's kind of obscure and you wouldn't really think about it when you see it in a vacuum, especially you're not seeing him hit left-handed, right-handed back-to-back. But when you see it, a 3-second, 4-second clip of him left-handed, then right-handed, you kind of have a better idea about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And this isn't to say that he needs to stop switch hitting or that he's never going to hit left-handers. It's just right now he's not ready. I think there's no doubt in my mind next year that he goes back to Pawtucket, especially with consider that Pablo Sandoval's coming off the DL. And I think they're going to want to at least give him one more try at third to maybe at least build some trade value or something. But they've got him and they can give Travis Shaw a little bit more run, so there's no immediate need for Moncada to take over at third base in the majors. So I think there's no doubt he goes to Pawtucket to start next season, and that's okay. I think that's fine. So he'll have some time to develop. He'll need it, and it's quite all right if he doesn't come up till next July or August. Frankly, I'm fine with that. So we'll talk a little bit about some more of the September call-ups in a bit, but let's get back to the rankings. Jason Groome held steady at 4 above Michael Kopech at 5. And I want to mention that Kopech was on an absolute tear. I'll pull the stats up, but Ian, was there ever any doubt in your mind that Kopech would be perhaps maybe passing Jason Groome for the number 4 spot?
No, not really, because he was on a tear and then he did what he's prone to do.
Well, but that was after we'd voted. To be fair,
true, but but it's just I don't even. Yes, the run is insane. I think he's.
I've got it right here.
Okay, you got it here. You read that, then I'll go on my little spiel.
Yeah, so there were. He had 5 starts from August 2nd through the 24th. In those 5 starts, he went 29 innings, only allowed 10 hits, 4 runs, 3 of them earned. Only walked 9, which is the biggest thing for me. Only walking 9 in 29 innings. Not that that's pinpoint accuracy, but it's great for him, especially. And struck out 49 batters in 29 innings, which is kind of insane. That's almost 2 batters. Well, 2 batters an inning would be 58, but it's closer to 2 batters an inning than 1. I don't really feel like doing the math right now. He did hit a couple of guys too. But he was on an absolute tear. The other start we were talking about is his start that happened on August the 31st, on a day that admittedly it was a game that was suspended and restarted the next day because of wet conditions. But he only lasted 2 of an inning. He faced 8 batters. He allowed 1 hit, walked 5. I think he had a wild pitch in there, and the final batter he faced hit a grand slam. So he recorded 2 outs, allowed a hit, and allowed 5 walks, and the 1 hit was the grand slam. So 6 runs in 2/3 of an inning, that'll do a number on your ERA. But like you said, that's kind of what he's prone to, and that's why even with a run like the type he went on, you can't get too far ahead of yourself.
Yeah, we all know that he's got the fastball, and when you're in the low minors and you can throw 98 to 100 consistently for strikes, you're going to get strikeouts, especially at this late in the season in the Carolina League, where most of the good hitters have been promoted up to Double-A, and a lot of the other guys, you're kind of running on fumes at this point in the season. So yes, he's missing a ton of bats, but it's mainly with his fastball. And yes, he's throwing the slider more. We have not seen him in person since Lowell. I saw his first start of the year, but since then he seems to have been incorporating the slider more. But when he's a 2-pitch guy right now. You need a third pitch to be a starter in the upper minors in the big leagues. And he just has those questions between that, the command and control questions, and just long term. Obviously, there's been some other stuff off the field that's happened. There's still some questions that I need to be answered, and I think next year will be a better test when he's up in Double-A. It'll be the first time he's really seeing those organizational hitters that will go up there, put a professional at bat together, and the guys that you have to turn the line. You need a third pitch to turn the lineup around. You can't just get by on 2 pitches. So it's encouraging to have those, especially as you said, the walks were down somewhat, but still it doesn't really change that we know these are the things that he can already do, and I need to see him take that next step before I'm going to push him up into that next tier and be more secure in being able to confidently say that I think he can be a starter long term, which right now I'm still not convinced.
And I was just thinking, Ian, I know we were going to talk about firsthand stuff later, but come to think of it, I think this might make more sense to be a place to talk about Jason Groome, if you agree. You were able to see.
Yeah, that's fine.
You were able to see Jason Groome's first start for Lowell on Thursday in Norwich, Connecticut, and I'm going to read. Ian did me a favor tonight in setting up our agenda for the podcast. I want to read precisely word for word what he wrote. He writes, "First-hand stuff. Ian drove to the middle of nowhere, Connecticut, for a doubleheader and got viciously attacked by mayflies for most of the first game. He also saw Jason Groome pitch." First of all, have you recovered? Second of all, tell us about Jason Groome.
Barely. It was a battle, but I do it for our readers and the audience. So just know it's for you guys. But yeah, so Jason Groome is good. I mean, he's 17, or he just turned 18 years old. He doesn't look like an 18-year-old, first off, in the sense that he's a baby face, so you can tell he's 18 in that sense, but he's probably 6'6", 230. Like, he's built like a man.
He's listed 6'6", 220, but you think he's 230.
Yeah, he's probably 220 is fine. He's around that. Yeah. Like, he's built like a man. Like, there's some tree trunk lower, like thighs. Like, it's a starting pitcher's build. And that's the first thing. Like, I haven't seen an 18-year-old look like that as a pitcher in a long time. I trying to think back. Like, usually when you're talking about 18-year-olds, even when Kopech entered the org, he was a string bean. He was like 6'4", probably 180, 190. Like, you just don't see guys built like him at the age of 18. And the next thing, it's his delivery is so free and easy. He just, it's effortless, just goes up there. He's got the long levers, comes back, clean behind, 3/4 arm slot, arm works through fine, good extension, like everything that we heard before the draft about his delivery looked true. And it just, again, it's like I have no qualms about his delivery. It's one of those things that, yep, that's a guy who can, repeat his delivery for 6 innings, no questions asked. And that's the biggest thing with Kopech is his delivery. Still, he's improved it. I still not sure he can repeat it over 5-6 innings stints daily. Versus Groome, you see that guy. That's what a starting pitcher looks like, if that makes sense. His overall line, he threw 2 2/3 innings. He didn't give up a hit. Walked 4 guys and struck out 2. So on the walks, I think it wasn't like he was missing badly. The 2 of them were on 3-2 counts, and the other 2 were 3-1 counts. So it wasn't like he was going up there and throwing 4 pitch walks together. It was, some of them were just, guys put together a couple good ABs. That's going to happen occasionally. It was also his first start, so, little nerves maybe. But he did a good job, and with that, the nerves thing too. The first 2 walks came in the first inning to the second and third batters he faced, and he was still able to recover from that. So it was good to see him, after putting guys on base, he was able to fight back and still get out of the innings. He did give up a run, but it wasn't him. It was the guy who came in afterwards, so I'm not really concerned about that. And his fastball, he was 90 to 93, touched 94 once, but he was mostly 91, 92 in that area. He threw a couple like 89, 90 that looked maybe 2-seamers. They had a little more run on them. and he was keeping those down. And that was the one thing. His fastball, it's got life. He keeps it down, which was nice. And it's really easy velo. I think there's more in there. It's something that I could see him probably getting up into we heard from the high school season that he was up, I think 96. So I could see him eventually settling in, 92 to 94, topping out at 96, maybe even 97, if he needs to. And the command profile with the delivery, it's good. There's definitely, he's going to throw strikes long term. I'm pretty confident about that. And the secondary pitches, the curveball was impressive. It was 75 to 79 miles an hour. I liked it a little more, around 76, 77, the lower end. Had depth. He threw 2 easy +1s at his last inning of work for swing and misses that just started right up at the left-hander's head and ended up, down and away, just a no-shot pitch for the hitter. And only one changeup, so I'm guessing, I don't know if they're having him kind of shelve that for this year. I'm hoping to see him one more time before the season ends and have a better idea with that. But obviously he's going to have to develop the changeup. That's going to take time. But just, on the fastball, curveball alone, combined with the age, the delivery, it's really impressive. And you can see why he was considered one of the top prospects coming into the draft this year.
Yeah, it was a good report to get back from you, especially because if you were looking just at the game day, as I kind of was peeking at every now and then, unfortunately as well as at work, so I couldn't really pay attention to it. But you kind of saw, at least from the game day, a lot of balls thrown. But so you think he was just nibbling a little?
Yeah, he had one instance early where it seemed like he was kind of just yanking everything glove side and up and away from lefties. But it was something where, his arm would be a little out of sync and then he'd get it back in with the next hitter. So it didn't really linger. And as I said, it was, 3-2 pitches. So yeah, the first one was a 7th pitch of at bat. The next one was a 3-1 count. I remember being a close pitch. And then other than that, it was a lot of...
You're saying those are the 2 close pitches, you mean?
Well, no. The first walk was a 6-pitch walk, and it was just down. It was a curveball.
All right, okay.
The second one was a fastball, a little... it wasn't like he was missing by a ton. He was falling behind. He obviously needs to throw more strikes. He only threw 28 out of 56 pitches, so that's exactly 50%. Mm-hmm. So obviously he's going to need to throw more strikes, but... It wasn't like, he was all over the place like we've seen some guys in the past who have put up like 4 or 5 walk lines. Thinking back to like Jay Cozart last year or the famous like Randy Consuela game. It wasn't something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's good then. But as far as what you saw, what's the separation between him and Kopech? Is it significant for you still?
It's not. It's pretty. It's not like a massive gap, but I never seriously considered it, and after I've seen both of them this year, I that further like reconfirmed what I was thinking.
Yeah. And
it's just there are more questions with Kopech. Like the big thing with Groome is can he develop a changeup? And obviously, he only threw 1 in this start, and it's something that he's going to have to work on. But the other things are there. The delivery's there, the body is there. I think the command profile is going to be there. With Kopech, I have questions: 3rd pitch, command profile, delivery. Mm-hmm. There's more, things, count the off the field concerns because both of them have some things. Yeah, just strictly on field. I just think Kopech has more questions that I need answered. And yes, he's ahead developmentally than Groome, but I think Groome, if Groome develops a changeup, you could dream on a guy maybe like a 65, 70 fastball, 70 curveball, and I don't know, changeup. Let's just say it develops into a 50 from a lefty, especially the left-handedness is a big deal. Right. That's a potential top of the rotation starter versus Kopech, he's got the 80 fastball, but what's the command control going to develop into? The slider, okay, let's say 65 slider. He's a righty, no change out, no 3rd pitch. Like, I just think there's more questions with Kopech.
Fair enough. Yeah, for me, I think Kopech has raised his profile. I think he's on the rise in the month of August. I just think that there was enough of a gap between him and Groome that it wasn't like he was going to make up that distance with a good month.
It's definitely closed, but I still think the gap is, it's pretty significant.
Yeah, for me, Kopech in the month of August cemented that he'll be a top 100 prospect in the offseason.
I agree. I think he's probably going to push the top 75 too on some lists if people are aggressive.
He might push 50 if people are really aggressive.
Yeah,
if you believe in the mechanics, if you believe on him developing. I mean, we'll see what he does in Arizona too.
I was just about to say that. I'm very interested to see because he's going to be facing much better hitters than he faced during the regular season.
Yeah. I mean, maybe this is a good time to mention that is that the participants in the Arizona Fall League were announced, and I don't have the list in front of me, so I'm going to attempt to do it from memory. But to me, the biggest ones obviously were Michael Kopech, who's going to be a starter out there, and Yoan Moncada, who's going to go out there and continue to develop at third base, going to continue working on playing third base out there. So we're gonna. Why is that? I just realized.
I know the list of you.
No, I know it off the top of my head. I just realized on the org page on the website we still have Moncada and AA. That's a problem. Ooh. But I'll fix that after we do this and before the podcast goes up. So, so Moncada will play third base. Kopech will pitch. Those are the biggest deals. Also from the Portland Sea Dogs is shortstop Mauricio Dubon. Not surprising. He was a guy that we had pegged as likely to go to the Arizona Fall League. No catchers. The crazy thing to me is everybody... Oh, no. Sorry, one more member of the Sea Dogs was left-hander Jalen Beeks, who... I guess he might start. He may or may not start or relieve. We're not sure. It would be interesting if they used him as a reliever. The reason I say that is because we had been talking before the podcast, and I can't ever remember them sending two starting pitchers.
Hey guys, quick interjection. Jalen Beeks is going to be relieving in the Arizona Fall League. We've learned that this week. Thanks to Alex Spear and his 108 Stitches newsletter for that information. If you're not subscribing to that, you should. Okay, back to the pod.
Because, I mean, Beeks' future is in the bullpen, as you've said, Ian, right?
Yeah, I'd like to see him relieve.
Yeah, I would too, especially as a left-hander. That would be interesting. Speaking of left-handers, one guy who we know is going to be relieving in the Arizona Fall League is Trey Ball from Salem, it was interesting because everybody else that they're sending is from Salem, which is very weird. Very weird for me.
You'll know this. Isn't there a rule that you're only allowed to send one person? Okay, so it's gone now?
I think they got rid of it. Well, clearly they got rid of it
that makes
because
sense.
They're sending.
Yeah.
The rule used to be, and if I cut you off, Ian, I apologize because you're occasionally breaking up, but I'll edit most of it out in post production.
You're breaking up for me too. Okay.
Interesting. Maybe we have a bad connection, but after I say this piece, I'll restart the call. But. Trey Ball, the thing with him is he is going to go to the Arizona Fall League and be a reliever, according to Alex Spear. He's going to relieve in the Arizona Fall League, but that doesn't mean they're moving him into relief. He's going to come into camp next year as a starting pitcher. And what I was saying to you, Ian, before we started recording was I think the reason might be that they want him to get innings, but that they're only allowed to get guys they're only allowed to get, say, one guy starters innings. And Ball's a guy who missed, a month, whereas Kopech missed 2.5, I think, right? Kopech didn't make his debut until June 17th. I'm sure Ball was...
Ball was before then because he's thrown 120 innings.
Yeah, so Ball needs innings, but he doesn't need innings as badly as Kopech does. Yeah, Ball made his first start on April the 28th. So he had, close to 2 months ahead of him. So Ball needs innings. So it doesn't. I mean, that said, and as Alex said in his article, if they see something they like out of him in relief, if his stuff ticks up or something in the Arizona Fall League, who knows? Maybe that plan changes. Because frankly, it's just not working as a starter for Ball right now. It's still inconsistent. You just wonder how much more development time do you really have with him? The other guys going to the Arizona Fall League are from the Salem Red Sox, a guy who's on the disabled list right now, and Danny Mars, the outfielder. Part of that might be because he has been on the DL. He was starting to get kind of hot down the stretch for Salem, got hurt, fouled the ball off of his foot, and he's been on the DL, and he's still not in game shape yet, I guess. Still down with that injury. Which is part of why you'll hear a promotion we'll talk about in a second happened, we think. But I guess he's going to go out there, in theory, to make up some at-bats that he missed. Usually, we kind of thought it was going to be like a Cole Sturgeon type that would go out there, but probably a good time to remind everybody that if a player is from a country that has a winter baseball league, in particular, say, the Dominican Republic, they cannot go to the Arizona Fall League. The person I'm thinking of right now is Nuri Tavares, who I know a lot of people have asked us about. He can't go to the Arizona Fall League because he's from the Dominican Republic. He has to go play in the Dominican Republic. So that's part of why it was going to be either like Danny Mars, or if you're going to take someone off of the AA roster to fill that outfield spot, it was going to have to be Cole Sturgeon, because he's the only outfielder that they've got under contract from next year from the AA level. So he'll go, and the final guy is Jamie Callahan, a reliever who's been closing, I guess, for Salem, I think, at least on occasion. But Jamie Callahan is going to go for the second year in a row. He's a guy who's going to be Rule 5 eligible. So that's probably why they either want to showcase him for a trade for a team that might want to protect him, or see if I can't see them protecting him. So it's not like they're going to see if he's worth it putting on the 40-man or anything. But
yeah, he's got good stuff, but
yeah,
it comes and goes, and the command and control is not there.
Yeah, I mean,
and he's obviously miles away.
Yeah, if they were serious about adding him to the 40-man, they would. I mean, he spent all of last year in Greenville before they sent him to the Arizona Fall League, where he threw 3 innings. This year, he spent all year in Salem. If they were serious about him being added to the 40, they would have promoted him to Portland at some point, you'd think.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's the Arizona Fall League contingent. All right, continuing down the top 10 prospects on the September 1st rankings, Sam Travis stays at 6 with his ACL injury. Brian Johnson stays at 7, although at least I considered dropping him, basically because he's been back from his extended absence due to just seeking treatment for anxiety. He's been up and down in Pawtucket. Frankly, I think we kind of all decided we need to see what happens with him next year before we bump Luis Alexander Basabe ahead of him. But I know I thought about it. Did you?
Yeah, I to be honest, I was pretty set in that top tier, but looking at it now, I mean, Johnson's kind of done what you'd expected. He had one bad start, but other than that, he's been serviceable, and it's kind of what he is. So it's something. Yeah, it was a consideration, but not really.
Yeah. So at number 8, staying there, was Luis Alexander Basabe, who merits mention because he was one of 2 players who got promoted to Salem. First, Michael Chavis got promoted from Greenville to Salem, which happened on the 23rd of August. So he got promoted to Salem on the 23rd, and they placed him on the disabled list on the 1st of September. To then call up Luis Alexander Basabe. So it looks like Chavis might be, you would assume he's probably done for the year if he's getting placed on the DL on September the 1st. But who knows? We don't have any news on that injury. But I don't know. Maybe he re-aggravated the thumb, or maybe not. Who knows? He hasn't really been great since coming back from his thumb injury, whereas he was hitting very well beforehand. So Chavis, interesting. Gets the promotion. Probably, Ian, I think just as much. By the way, Chavis is at 14 in the current rankings. He actually fell 1 despite the promotion. But I think the promotion is just kind of let's see if this sparks something in him. At that point, he'd spent almost 2 full years in Greenville. Just kind of promote him to see if that lights him up or gets him going in.
Yeah, I mean, you had to push him eventually because you can't spend 2 full years in Greenville. So I think it was just, it's time to move him up and see what happens. Get him a taste before next year.
Yeah, but at the same time, Salem was a team that is playoff bound, and it's nice to see Basabe coming up. I'm frankly a little bit surprised they weren't planning on doing that anyway. In the outfield, especially with Mars down, they were starting Mike Myers and Brian Hudson splitting time in left field. Joseph Monhay was starting in center field, and Jace Ray was starting in right field, who was playing well, but he's an indie ball guy who is 26 years old. So not really. Why does it still say he's in? Oh, God. Anyway, but yeah, Jace Ray, not a guy who they were really looking to get at bats long term. So interesting that they're going to get Basabe a chance there. You think he hits the ground running, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, I think this season's been a pretty successful season for him. He's cut the strikeout rate a little bit, but showing the power, 12 home runs, speed, 25 steals. Average is obviously low because we've talked about, I think, especially after the post Greenville trip episodes, the hit tool is the big question, but I think it's a good taste for him. It'll be a good experience. Get a couple games and playoff games under his belt before he starts there next year.
Yeah, interesting. He's 6 for 12 in his 3 games with 2 doubles and a triple, in a league that certainly suppresses power. I'm not sure if they've been on the road or at home, honestly. But actually, Salem's home ballpark, I noticed this the other day. Apparently, 16 home runs by the Salem Red Sox at their home ballpark this year. So it is, for whatever reason, I mean, the Carolina League usually does suppress power, but not to this degree. So it's interesting to see that just, and they've had guys there who hit for power. I mean, Moncada, Benintendi, even Nick Longy's got a little bit of pop, but not a lot of home runs being hit at that level this year for whatever reason. So, it's one of those things where you got to kind of talk to someone who's been there every day and see, are the doubles, off the wall doubles that would be out in a lot of other parks, or, are they, well hit balls down the line that are kind of, garbage doubles that, maybe in the major leagues, an outfielder with better speed and a good arm holds you to a single. So, kind of interesting to see how that's playing. But yeah, Basabe, interestingly, going to get a shot at some playoff baseball. I personally like it a lot. Rounding out the top 10, a couple guys who moved up. One were Marco Hernandez and Mauricio Dubon. They passed the guy who fell down to 13, and Josh Ockamy, kind of struggling a bit down the stretch. But as we've said here on the podcast before, I think part of it's hitting a wall. Part of it might just be, the league is adjusting to him, and he's got to adjust back to the league. Did it sound about right to you, Ian? I'm not too worried about it, but it did merit a little bit of a drop. I think that it's he hasn't really done much in the second half at this point.
Yeah, I think he's getting shifted, which is not a good sign. So he's going to have to obviously start working the other way more. And I think the tired part is definitely a consideration, as this is his first season of full season ball. So right. He's not been playing this many games the last 2 years. And then I think the last thing too was, I mean, he's not like a 300 hitter or whatever he was when he was in his hot streak. The average was always going to regress. I don't think he's as a 230 hitter. I think it's going to go up a little bit. But his BABIP, is down at 289 right now, which is a little unlucky. But I think
289?
Yeah,
that's not that unlucky.
Isn't it usually like 320 or something?
I mean, it depends on what's his line drive rate?
18.9% or 7%.
So I think it's usually the rule of thumb is to go up 10% from that. So you would expect the 289.
Okay, then it's about right.
So that's about right.
Feel free to edit that out then.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, learning. I mean, he's still walking. He's still walking a lot, striking out a lot. But yeah, the average, it is what it is. It's. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens. He's got to hit because he's got the power. It's just, is he going to hit enough?
Yeah. Another guy we want to talk about is the guy who comes up at 11. Last month he was 21st. Is Bobby Dalbec, third baseman from Lowell. He is tearing the cover off the ball right now. I've got his Lowell numbers right here in 32 games. He's hitting .395 with a .440 on base and slugging .702. He's got 7 home runs in 32 games. Admittedly does have 29 strikeouts, so that's a 21.6% strikeout rate.
He's up to 31 now. Struck out 2 more times today.
Okay, well, at least entering today. It was that. Ian, you've seen him a few times now. I don't think we've talked about him very much on here. Maybe a little. Oh no, we did talk about him on the last podcast, but yeah, we talked about him because we got an email about him.
You're right.
And in fact, we may as well read it right now. Come to think of it, it's from Michael, frequent podcast emailer. Hi guys, I appreciated your discussion of Bobby Dalbec on the last podcast. It's very encouraging to hear that he is showing power to all fields and games. What are reasonable expectations for him going forward? How does the level of play in Lowell compare to what he experienced in college, where he struggled? And he also mentioned, we may as well mention it. Well, I should see what this name was. We'll leave it to that. So, Bobby Dalbec, reasonable expectations for him going forward. To me, the question, Ian, is where does he start next year? Is it Greenville or Salem? That's the first thing I'm going to be intrigued to see what they do coming out of camp next year.
Yeah, I mean it's a good question because if you just go on the numbers and the collegeness, you would think Salem.
Right.
But at the same time, he is still a little raw at the plate, especially considering this year he was splitting time with pitching and everything. So I could see them wanting to get his feet wet a little bit in Greenville in a more favorable hitting environment, maybe for a month or two before eyeing an early promotion to Salem. Also considering he's actually pretty young for the level. He just turned 21 this summer. So he was playing. He started his career as a 20-year-old, even though he'd already been a 3-year college guy. But I think, reasonable expectations for him is you're going to have to live with the strikeouts is the first thing. He's never not going to strike out. It's going to be a 25% around there, 25 to 30% strikeout rate, even when he gets to the upper minors. but the power is legit. It's 70 raw power. It's 25 plus home run power in game if he can make enough contact. So that's going to be the carrying tool. And yeah, it's going to come down to if he can hit, as he can become an average, maybe even a fringe average hitter and hit 250 to 260, he'll hit 25, 30 home runs and be a third baseman, because that's a third base profile right there, especially given he has a 70 arm over there.
Right.
But if he doesn't make enough contact and he's more 220, 230 hitter, then you're looking more, what is that, like Mark Reynolds, a bench corner guy, who can crush his lefties, but strikes out too much to be an everyday guy. So a lot's going to depend on how the hit tool develops. But the ceiling is, if everything clicks with him, it's a roll 6, first division type number 5 hitter profile.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, I'm okay with Mark Reynolds out of a 4th round pick personally.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I'm not saying he's gonna. That was just like a quick, like, that's like if he doesn't hit. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, and that's would be a great return even.
Yeah, as far as comparing the Pac-12 to the New York Penn League, I mean, I think it's always tough to compare because there's so much that's different. I mean, first of all, you're playing every day as opposed to weekends and one or two games during the week. I mean, the quality of competition is not quite as good. It's not like this is the SEC, but it's not like it was bad competition either. In the New York Penn League, you get a lot of it's not a great league talent-wise in terms of you have a lot of guys who are just drafted and going on fumes. You got a lot of guys who come up from the complex leagues that are still incredibly raw. It's just tough to get a gauge. That's why we basically tell people to kind of ignore Lowell stats. That said, I mean, to be perfectly honest, and I looked this up the other day, Ian, editing your scouting scratch that's going to go up early this week, I think. There's just really not a comparison for the numbers that Dalbec is putting up this year in Lowell. I think you have to go back to like Ryan Kalish in 2009 to see someone hitting the way that Dalbec is hitting this year, and Dalbec's hitting better than Kalish was. I was really not able to find a guy since like 2005 that was hitting like this that wasn't rehabbing or incredibly old for the level. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting that he's just dominating Lowell in a way. I mean, Benintendi maybe near the end was hitting like this, but he didn't hit like this in a sustained way for the way that Dalbec is. But that said, it's a hot month, not even a month. So, we're not going to hot shot him into the top 5 yet. So, I know you were pushing for him to be in the top 10. I think.
Yeah, but it was like the end. It's the very end. I mean,
it's the very. Oh, no. That's what I'm saying. You were pushing for him to go into the top 10. That's different from into the top 5. 2 separate points. Yeah. 2 completely separate points. I think I see your point. For me, I kind of want to see a little bit more this year. Let him close out the year. Lowell has clinched a playoff spot, so they're going to be in the playoffs. It would be interesting to see what he does there, get him some more at-bats, and maybe have you see him down in instructs personally before I'm ready to push him ahead of, Marco Hernandez and Mauricio Dubon, who I think are both future utility guys at the major league level. With maybe they could start for a year or something at second base. But, Dalbec may have the higher ceiling, but like you said, there's a lot of holes there that he needs to continue working on. We'll kind of go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in regards to the question, too, I kind of think, like, looking at Dalbec's stats from Arizona this year is going to be misleading because obviously he was terrible. But the guy he is right now is not the same player. He's changed his stance, as Matt talked about in the article he wrote last week, and I'm going to talk about in the one that's going to go up probably Tuesday. And this is something we've confirmed, obviously, with Dalbec himself when Matt talked to him, and I was able to confirm it independently with a scout who saw him during the college season extensively. So that's changed, and he's not pitching anymore, which is another huge thing. When you're pitching, you're having to throw a bullpen every couple days. You're having to work on your PFPs, do all that stuff. You can't spend all your time focusing on hitting and playing third base, and so that's kind of a big weight off his shoulders, as he also echoed to Matt. So that's why he's one of the few guys where I don't care what his college stats this year were, because it's not the same guy.
Also told Matt that he likes hitting with wood better than with aluminum, which I found interesting.
Well, I think it's the new BB Core bats. Some people, like one of my friends, really, a college coach, has talked about that. Yeah, because they just don't feel good.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. But it was just funny to hear him talk about, like, you can try all kinds of different things with the bats in terms of weights and lengths and stuff. So, anyway, at number 12 was CJ Chatham. Anything on him from Lowell, Ian? Maybe just a quick hit.
He's looking a little better. changed his stance a little bit. He's a little more crouched now, and he's getting to the ball a little quicker. I still am not sure about how much power he has. I haven't been able to catch BP, and even though he's 6'4", just the swing doesn't really look like one that lends itself to much power. But in the field, I like what I've seen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Not a whole lot else, I think, in the top 20 that's worth really talking about. Maybe just a couple of guys who moved around a little bit in the rankings, and then we'll talk about some other guys independently. Mike Shawaryn, talking about another Lowell guy who you've seen in. Maybe you can talk about, moves up from 27 to 22.
Yeah, I've seen him 3 times now, I think, and the last one was actually, he was in the doubleheader that Groome started, and that was the most impressive I've seen him. He was 92 to 94, showed off, threw a couple good changeups, like 50, 55 changeups, and just looked crisper. And I'm not sold he's a starter long term because of his arm action. But I think in the bullpen, he could be pretty good if they wanted to move him quick. Obviously, they're going to develop as a starter, given how much money they gave him. But I was impressed more than I had been his first 2 starts when I saw him the last time.
All right. A couple other guys that moved. Henry Ramos dropped from 25 to 33. Just for me, he got demoted from Pawtucket to Portland. I will pull up the date of that transaction, but he's also on the disabled list again. So to me, this is a guy that can't stay on the field. And yeah, he was sent down from Pawtucket to Portland on August the 19th. Part of that was just running out of room on the Pawtucket roster. It was when Marco Hernandez reported from being optioned down from Boston. But the thing is that Pawtucket outfield right now is, they're starting Chris Dominguez in left field a lot. Rusney Castillo's hitting well in center, and Ryan Lamar is playing every day between center field and right field. They're getting, Bryce Brent and Chris Marrero and Brennan Bosch some run, although Bosch not so much. So it's a little bit crowded, but if I think the Red Sox had any plans for Ramos, they would make room for him. I don't think, Chris Dominguez is necessarily pushing a guy that they have high hopes for out of playing time. So for me, I think once they demoted him, I think he's a guy that they might let leave in free agency this offseason, frankly. Or maybe, they'll try and re-sign him, but he's not a guy that I think they're going to add to the 40-man by any stretch. And as they've left him off the 40-man for 2 years in a row now. I don't know if you've got anything to add on Ramos, Ian, but it kind of sad, not sad, but disappointing to see where that's going for a guy who we've heard, could turn the corner and be a potential bench bat or something.
Yeah, that was very well said.
A guy that I know you want to talk about rose from 48 to 36. That's left-hander Darwinzon Hernandez and Lowell.
Yeah, he's a weird one because if you look at his stats, they're not very good, mainly the walks. But I just, we've kind of talked about it on a past podcast that after the top 20 or so, it's pretty much a crapshoot. Mm-hmm. And there's not, when you're getting down this late, you're kind of throwing darts, and it's personal preference. And Hernandez, just 19-year-old, he's up to 95. He's a lefty, has shown some feel for a breaking ball. And when I compared him to like the other guys in this area, that was enough for me to justify being around here, even though he's walking. I think you said in an email he has the most walk or the highest walk percentage of any guy in the system or something. But he can miss bats, and the stuff is intriguing, especially as a 19-year-old. So I think at this point, it's kind of a why not, especially the guys around him are nothing special. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To me, those are kind of the big intriguing movers, really. After that, a little bit of movement, but nothing too major. Though Christopher Acosta, we should just mention why we moved him down from 40 to 60. Still hasn't reported. He won't pitch. He will end up not pitching this year. It's a situation where we basically took him off the board when we voted, with the idea that we would then just place him where we decided to put him. That's why he's been at 40 on the nose, and that's why we're moving him down to 60 on the nose. He's a guy who, if he's there and playing and everything's going right, he's probably a top 20 prospect in the system. But as we mentioned in the past, apparently had some kind of disciplinary issue while in extended spring training, which led to him getting demoted to the Dominican Summer League instead of playing in the Gulf Coast League. He reportedly never reported to the team and is on the restricted list. For us, for all we know, he comes back next year, goes to Lowell, and things get back on track, or he never pitches again. Who knows? Honestly, we have no idea, which is why we're just hedging bets and putting him at 60. So that was probably the other movement of note. in the rankings. So getting back to some of the September call-ups, Ian, maybe. We talked a lot about Ian Moncada. The other guy that is kind of most noteworthy because Devin Marrero came up, Joe Kelly came up. People know who they are. Robbie Scott was added to the 40-man roster. William Cuevas was designated for assignment. Robbie Scott, we talked about him last time, I think, but just interesting. I'm happy he's getting the shot. Frankly, I think it's great to see. It's a great story, and I think he actually does have a chance to have a role for this club down the stretch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've the left-handed relievers have been somewhat of a troubling thing for them. They went out and got Fernando Abad at the deadline, and he's been not very good. Notice I didn't make the joke I made last episode there. That was great. You can only make the same terrible joke so many times. But Scott it's a good story. Undrafted guy out of Florida State when it was pitching. You were explaining it to me before the podcast.
Yeah, he pitched
some
in the
random league.
The North American Baseball League, and there was a great story up. I think it was either Brian McPherson or Tim Britton from the Pro Joe. I think it was BMAC, who had a great story up about Robbie Scott, his time in the North American Baseball League, where his manager was Jose Canseco. He was teammates with Tony Phillips, who was in his 50s at the time, like that Tony Phillips, the second baseman. They played against Hawaii, or a team in Hawaii where you would go out there for a 10-game series because otherwise, the travel just didn't make any sense. It was just really weird. I mean, the North American Baseball League is not one of the leagues you see guys signed out of. I always thought he was an undrafted free agent. Frankly, I didn't.
Well, that's what I thought too.
Yeah,
but you look this is why scouting's so important. His stats in his last year in Florida: 9 1/3 innings.
Florida State, not in Florida.
State. Sorry,
my wife will kill you.
I was just about to say I'm scared now. He had 9 walks, 9 strikeouts, and 9 1/3 innings at Florida State. Gave up 5 runs, allowed 3 hits. Off of that, guy pitched 9 innings his last year of college ball. And then, obviously he spent a couple years in the GCL. I mean, it's a good story. And as a loogie, I think there's potential. We saw with Tommy Lane this year. I mean, he stuck around for a while, and he's kind of in the same mold where Scott will vary his arm slot depending on if it's a lefty or righty at the plate or, the count, things like that. He's usually about low 3/4, at 3/4, he'll drop down to low 3/4, even sidearm. So he'll vary it, give the hitters a bunch of different looks because his fastball is more, the 85, 86 up to 88, 89 range. Mm-hmm. But then it's a big, long curveball, 71 to 73, and a changeup too. But it's not big velocity or anything. But he's just a command and control guy, deception, and kind of the crafty lefty we've seen have some success in the past with the Red Sox.
Yeah, and he's a guy that I think they're not going to have any problem DFAing this offseason if they need his roster spot either. So I think that's regardless of how he pitches. Frankly, I think he's a guy that his role on a major league team, if he has one, is going to be as that middle inning loogie. He's not even really a candidate to be a setup guy, but his value isn't that he can do that and that he's so versatile at the AAA level. I mean, he's made a number of spot starts this season. When they've needed a guy to come out of the bullpen and make a start and give them length, not just make his 2-inning appearance at the beginning of a game. So good for him, man. It's good to see a guy like that get a shot, frankly. So cheers, Bobby Dalbec. Robbie Scott. The Obby thing got me. Robbie Scott. Also, so those are the guys that came up on September the 2nd. Also on Monday, the team has announced that Christian Vasquez is going to come up, Heath Hembry and Noe Ramirez are going to come up, and that Koji Uehara, what is wrong with me? I'm punchy. Koji Uehara is going to be activated from the disabled list, which is a welcome return, even though I guess they're going to ease him back into game action. But to me, it's interesting, and you agreed with me, Ian. No outfield call-ups, apparently. It doesn't sound like they're even going to call up Bryce Brents, who is on the 40-man roster. I'm very surprised about this. Right now at the major league level, I mean, I guess they consider Brock Holt an outfielder. Because right now at the major...
You made an error to lose the game. In the outfield. I don't know if you watched today's game.
I didn't even know that, honestly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I missed it because I was out all day. I knew... Yeah, I mean, so the outfield right now is Chris Young in left, Jackie Bradley in center, Mookie Betts in right. I mean, I guess it telegraphs that they think Andrew Benintendi is coming back sooner rather than later, for one thing, and that's fine. But, Brock Holt is your 4th outfielder right now, not even your 5th outfielder. He's your 4th outfielder. Your fifth outfielder is probably what, Marco Hernandez or Travis Shaw?
Yeah.
I mean,
I would say Hernandez.
I was surprised they didn't call up an outfielder on Friday. Never mind on Monday when the season's over. Some speculation about Rusney Castillo, who has been hitting well. You saw him, Ian, and just to sum up, I guess, tell me if this is correct, but to sum up what your thoughts were on him were when you saw him in Pawtucket, it's the same old, and you're not convinced by what the numbers are saying about him hitting any better recently. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, there's some raw tools there, but the feel isn't there, and pitch recognition is horrible. And I think the biggest concern, I mean, we talked about it before, is monetary. If they call him up, they're paying the tax on his contract, which is much more than the veterans minimum. So I just don't see any way he gets called up.
Yeah,
I just don't get why they aren't calling up one outfielder, though.
Yeah, I mean, again, in the month of August, okay, he hit 351, 402, 495. You see that and you think, what the heck? Get him up. But he can't. I don't think he's a candidate to be your pinch running guy, even though he's got good speed. He's 2 for 5 in stolen bases in August, so the speed thing isn't there. And he's still hitting a ton of ground balls. It's a 54% ground ball rate in the month of August. Average on balls in play is 430. He's hitting a lot of line drives. 24% of his at-bats are line drives. So he's just not hitting the ball into the air. To me, the line drives are probably like low line drives, not like, base hit line drives. To me, I think he's getting really lucky, and that's why the numbers went up recently. And the fact that, there was a great conversation on Tim Britton and Brian McPherson's podcast the other day about how you can't just go by what the numbers are telling you in AAA. They were talking about it with respect to relief pitching. For example, they were talking about Joe Kelly and about the fact that he wasn't walking anyone in AAA, but if he's not walking anyone, that doesn't mean he's not throwing that 96 mile per hour fastball down the middle of the plate that a AAA hitter is going to miss, and that a major league hitter is not going to miss, and he's going to hit it about 800 feet. So, with a guy like Rusney Castillo at the AAA level, okay, great, the slash line's wonderful, but you have to look at that batted ball profile. It's the same. More than half the balls he's hitting are ground balls. He's slapping the ball into the ground, and he's, getting really, really lucky with an average on balls in play above 400. So, this is not sustainable for him, and I think that's why you're not seeing him come up. But in addition to the monetary thing. The thing that surprises me, they're apparently going to carry 4 catchers, John Farrell was talking about, and I'm surprised by that. I thought they were going to DFA Brian Holiday, and to me, use that spot on a Ryan Lamar if you want, or just call up Brents, who's already on the roster. It's not like he's a stellar defensive outfielder, but he's an outfielder.
Well, I don't. They're going into an NL Park this week. They're going to have some weird roster things where you're going to want to make double switches and do all that stuff. And why would you not have flexibility when you're allowed to have 40 guys on the roster? Obviously you don't have to carry all 40, but I don't get why you're only playing with 30. You're kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage compared to the other teams that are calling more guys up.
Yeah, well, and it's not like they're not calling anybody up on the roster. In the I think the past 2 years, they've called up 39 of 40 guys. Am I remembering this correctly?
Or yeah, they didn't call up Alex Hassan 2 years ago.
Right, and last year Brents was the only guy they didn't call up. If you look at the roster this year, guys that aren't coming up, and keep in mind, of course, they probably had more guys on the 15-day DL in past years too. So up meaning either on the 15-day DL or on the active roster. But this year it looks like they're not going to call up Bryce Brents. They're not calling up Henry Owens and Brian Johnson. They're not calling up Williams Jerez. They're not calling up Renis Elias. Then that's it. So that's 5 guys. And especially Jerez. I had thrown him around as a guy they might DFA. I'm off of that now. I think that they keep him on the 40-man just because they give him one more year before they cut him loose. Because frankly, if they DFA him, he's gone. Especially in Rule 5, if not claimed on waivers, because there's going to be a team that has an open roster spot. Frankly,
he's getting claimed on waivers, definitely.
Yeah. So, but that's 5 guys you're not calling up. I still don't get why. I get why Johnson and Owens don't come up unless you need a spot start down the stretch. I get why Elias doesn't come up because unless you need him for a long guy out of the bullpen, if you want, but I think they have enough guys that they don't really need that, and they want to get innings for their, the real quote unquote bullpen guys. to see what they've got down the stretch. So you don't necessarily want Elias eating up innings, although maybe, I don't know, maybe they could do that. But they've got Henry and Noe Ramirez coming up on Monday, but I just don't get why Brents doesn't come up. That's puzzling to me. For the cost, it's not like it's that much. I don't know. I'm surprised. Is the point?
I agree.
But yeah, so that's the 40-man call-ups. Ian, it is late on a Sunday night. I have a lot to do. I think we need to wrap this up. Is there anything that we missed? I don't believe there is.
We're good.
I think we're good. All right, I'm going to have some extensive editing to do on this bad boy. But again, thank you all for downloading. Please subscribe, rate, and review. We appreciate it. Send us your emails to podcast@soxprospects.com or tweet us at the hashtag AskSP. That's hashtag AskSP. I'm going to go into TweetDeck right now once we hang up and add that list to my what's it called? My dashboard or whatever the heck they call it in TweetDeck, so that I can see those when they come in, so we can read your questions on the podcast. We appreciate it. So for Ian, I'm Chris. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back at you probably for our, I guess after the minor league season ends, including playoffs. Maybe that might be when we have the next one. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much. We're out.